keep us with a smile on our face, and especially when we're feeling sad, because we lost our mom, we lost our dear Sylvia, and for all of us, our dear friends too. But they do keep us smiling. And I just want to say, tears are a blessing. We shared so many memories together, and together as couples, because right off the bat, Glenn and Roger knew they had to be good friends because Sylvia and I just insisted on it. So that's the way it was going to be. 1964, a long time ago. Sylvia was in C3 and I was in C10 at E. Otis Vine Junior High. And surely it was within the first 24 hours of meeting her that we found our common ground, and we knew that we were going to be dear friends. That was just the way it was going to be too. And I remember, in reflecting over the last few days, I remember what one of my favorite outfits of hers. She had a beautiful two-piece navy blue suit, and she'd wear a little red rose and her little blue pumps, and her hair would be back like this, and she'd be marching up and down. And those, of course, were the olden days where we actually had to get dressed up, you know, as teachers. We soon realized that we just lived down the street from one another on South Arlington. And if not seeing each other every day was not enough, we would pack up our Volkswagen Beetles with all of our laundry and go to the laundromat and do our laundry for the week. And there were still enough words in our word box just to keep chatting, and we did. And speaking of cleaning, and I think somebody mentioned this, Sylvia would come to school and say, oh, I've just started my spring cleaning. I've done one room, and you might remember this of days, Dale. I've scrubbed all the walls, I've cleaned all the curtains, I've scrubbed the floors, and if that wasn't good enough, maybe she even painted. And I used to feel, again, oh my gosh, I don't think I do a very good job of spring cleaning. But she was, and then she would say, okay, so next weekend, it'll probably be the family room, and I'll start all over. And she'd do it. She loved her cleaning. And as you know, over the years, those who know her, she tiled the kitchen floor, the bathroom floor. I think she resurfaced the counters. These were just summer projects that Sylvia had to do over the years, and along with her gardening and everything else. So back to the boys for a minute, Roger and Glenn. They learned to love to play bridge with us in a game called a choir. But the best part, and how they got through it with us, and we'd go a couple of times a week back and forth doing this, is Glenn always had that Bristol cream sherry that he and Roger, that's what made the game fun. I'm not sure what Sylvia and I drank. We probably had tea for all I know. I don't remember. I remember the tea is one of your favorites too, Glenn. And one more thing, Glenn, you loved your coconut cake. Do you still eat coconut cake? He'd always look for any excuse to, I'm going to bring a coconut cake. So then we moved to the Northwest, and it wasn't many years later, just a couple, that they ended up moving to the Northwest as well, just a couple blocks away from us. Sylvia and Glenn got that itch, though, they're going to move. They wanted to go to Hawaii and teach. And so they did. And Sylvia and I would write back and forth. And Sylvia wrote and said, this isn't what it's cracked up to be. We don't like it. And I immediately wrote back and said, guess what? I'm pregnant. You can come back and finish my school year. And she did. They came right back. They were absolutely delighted. And of course, those again, this was a long time ago. If you were pregnant, that was something that you had to keep secret from your students. And when it became apparent that you were pregnant, you had to resign. But it worked out for us. And then I was able to return the favor 2 or 3 years ago. I'm trying to remember what's the difference between Paige and Kelly. And I finished Sylvia's year out for teaching 1 year. And I certainly ditto the many comments those that have made. She really was a fabulous teacher. I was a little nervous knowing I had to take over her class because she was this super English teacher. And that quarter, I had to teach haiku and other parts of poetry, short stories, how to read them, how to write them. But not to worry. She would sit with me and she taught me how to teach those classes. It was wonderful. It's probably one of my best teachings too, is when I took over her class. Her hands were never idle. You know, if she was not making jams and jellies, and that wasn't so long ago, and I always made sure that I returned the jars, hoping that she would continue to do this. But remember her Christmas ornaments. And I don't know if one was my favorite, that I still hang up on the tree, of course. It was a little white square, and it had a snowman in the middle, and said, "Merry Christmas," for Lewis's. And she had such a beautiful handwriting, too. But those were always treasures. She was always doing. And a fun story to share. Roger and I decided we were going to have an open house for, say, 40, 50 people. And Sylvia says, "Oh, I'll help you make all the hors d'oeuvres." Okay. And those are the days you made them all from scratch. We didn't have a Costco. So Sylvia and I would teach all day, and the week of the party, she'd come over every night, we'd make all these hors d'oeuvres. And I remember so clearly Sylvia saying, she's sitting in one chair and I'm sitting in the other, and we're doing something, making something. And she says, "You know, Katie, the night of the party, everyone's going to say, 'Oh my gosh, you worked so hard in preparing all this food.'" And she said, she starts laughing, and you'll answer, "Oh no, it was nothing," even though we had been slaving. The rest of that story is, the party was great. Obviously, Sylvia and I were a little bit too ambitious. We made way too much food. But my husband had this great idea. He decided to go in the kitchen and get some baggies, and he invited everybody that came to the party, "Oh, please take some home." And Sylvia and I looked at each other, thinking, we didn't even have to say it out loud, we could have had another party with all that food. And he just took it all away. Anyway, there were so many, fun things that we did together. Our lives became busier. My teaching career ended up only at 2.5 years. That was and I retired. Although I did go back and teach an alternative program that was very rewarding at Washoe High for a few years. But anyway, we moved again, and our lives got busy. You girls, Glenn, everybody was busy. We likewise were busy. But we always stayed in contact. And then in 79, we left Reno. So our times would be on the telephone once in a while, and it would be Glenn just as much as it would be Sylvia who would call and say, "Hey, what are you doing?" But always a Christmas card. And we always picked up the conversation where we left off. I always knew about you, Dale, and your sister Paige. I always knew what you were doing. Sylvia always knew what Kelly and Eric were doing, because that's what dear friends do. And something that just popped in my mind. Go back a few years. Our daughter Kelly was a year old, where she's in the kitchen, she's in the high chair, and in burst Glenn singing "Happy Birthday," and Glenn gave Kelly her very first doll. I just thought about that, Glenn. Treasured memories. The last 6 months of Sylvia's life, I only visited with her on the phone. And that was because it was so difficult for her. But again, Sylvia, she never complained. I knew she was suffering. Glenn would tell me that. But she always chose to talk about her family. And so I would too. And I would always say to her, before I hung up, "Sylvia, I pray for you every day." And in fact, I would always light a candle at church. And my friends that I pray with, they knew Sylvia without ever meeting her. But we always prayed for comfort for Sylvia and for Glenn and for the girls. And I know those prayers were answered. So hold on to those beautiful memories you have. Nobody can ever take those away from you, nor they can take them away from all her dear friends. and we love you.